Hello, welcome to Philosophy Roulette 80, where we read and review some random philosophy papers. I'd love to have you join me. If you do, it'd be cool. We can chat about the stuff in the chat box as it's going. If I see you reading, because I find it is so hard to actually read two things at once. It's very hard. Even though I got two eyes, I'm only reading one thing. But anyway, let's see. We got some analysis. Oh, I was doing analysis earlier today, so could keep looking. You know, did I do this new cosmological argument from grounding? I don't know. Now I've done two Johann Gustafsson. He's got two papers for forthcoming analysis. I've done both of them. Let's see what else we got. Space-time to space and time. I did pain in space on conclusion. What should humans say about Humians, not humans? Probably. I want to look at this. It wasn't available earlier. Maybe it's available now. Ooh. Let's see. Well, maybe I was worried it was a little too technical, but I'm thinking I'm going to do it now. So, it's available. Let's go for it. Carlotta Pavese, Probabilistic Knowledge in Action. And if you do join me live and you're in the chat, you can grab the paper under review by typing exclamation point paper in the chat box, and this link will pop back up, and then you can follow along, download. Hey Thaddeus, and you can just click on it. Well, you can click on that one too, but that's cool. So let's see what we got here. 1 of 14. Oh, that's why I didn't do this one. It's a book symposium. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to cancel this one. Ah, shucks. I knew I would have clicked on this already. Bother. Okay, so what else we got? How propaganda works. What makes time special? I mean, let's see. Consequence. But thank you, Thaddeus, for actually using the paper command. I think you're the first person to actually use it. Although I've chat with people, but no one else actually gets the paper. Let's see what else we got. The knowledge of norm blaming. This paper argues that standard evidence for the knowledge of norm assertion can be extended to provide evidence for a corresponding knowledge of norm of blame. That's interesting. We've been talking about a lot of norms of assertion lately, so maybe we'll take a look at that just for fun. Well, if this is here, I'll take a look. Let's see. No, Chris, some knowledge of norm blaming. Wait, is this it? Yeah. Thank you, Christoph Kelp, for having it up on your website. That's awesome. So I'm going to update this one because the other one was a symposium and I don't want to just read the symposium paper, the symposium description. Okay, so there we go. So I'm going to do this one instead. Cool. Okay, knowledge of norm blaming. This is the shortest abstract I've ever read. This paper argues that the standard evidence for the knowledge of norm of assertion can be extended to provide evidence for a corresponding knowledge norm of blame. Years ago, we used to just when someone did something wrong, I was at a job, we'd all just start chanting, "It's all your fault. It's all your fault." It was a lot of fun. Okay, so that was a mob mentality of blame. It was great. According to the knowledge norm of assertion, KNA, one must assert P only if one knows P. We were just talking about this stuff. But that's cool. Talk about it some more. Here are 3 data points that many of its advocates take to provide support for KNA. Excuse me. First, that assertions of lottery propositions, for example, your ticket didn't win the lottery, are impermissible, at least when based only on the probabilistic evidence against winning. Second, that assertions of Moorian conjunctions, for example, it is raining, but I don't know that it is raining, sound paradoxical, also called Moore's paradox, not Moore's conjunction. I guess that's what they call it in this literature, because I've seen other people call it this, but all the other times I've seen Moore's conjunction referred to, it's Moore's paradox. And third, that assertions can be challenged by asking how, whether the speaker knows, and is criticized by pointing out that the speaker doesn't know what they asserted. Yeah, you have to actually, when someone says, oh, how do you know that? You have to be able to say something reasonable at that point. And if you don't, then they can be like, well, why'd you say that then? The reason why these data points are taken to provide support for K&A is that K&A offers a very attractive explanation of all of them. First, one cannot know the lottery propositions, at least not when the only evidence one has is probabilistic. By K&A, the relevant assertions of lottery propositions come out impermissible. Second, here's what is going on when one asserts a Moorian conjunction according to K&A. When one asserts P, given that K&A holds, one gives one's hearer to understand that one knows P. However, when one asserts that one doesn't know that P, one explicitly denies what one has given one's hearer to understand by asserting P. No surprise then that these assertions sound paradoxical. Yeah, so it's P implies knowing P. So if you say you know P but then you don't know P, you got a problem. Third, norms that forbid one from fying unless one satisfies condition C license criticisms of fying by pointing out that one has fyed even though one doesn't satisfy C. Since K&A forbids one from asserting P unless one knows that P, K&A predicts correctly that assertions can be criticized by pointing out that the speaker doesn't know. Moreover, if norms that forbid one from fying unless one satisfies condition C license criticisms of the sort just described, then it is only to be expected that they also license challenges by asking whether one satisfies C and how it is that one satisfies C, at least if there are various ways of satisfying C. In this way, K&A also predicts, again correctly, that assertions can be challenged by asking how or whether the speaker knows. 3. The central thesis of this short paper is to argue that if these three data points do indeed provide support for K&A, then there is also support for what I call the knowledge norm of blaming, not K and B, as opposed to knowledge norm of assertion, knowledge norm of blaming. One must blame X for fying one must blame X for fying only if one knows that it was wrong for X to phi. Interestingly enough, if the above data points do indeed support K&A, there are parallel data points that serve to support K and B. Let's start by looking at the data. First, blame based only on probabilistic evidence is impermissible. If the only evidence that X impermissibly phied is that X is among 999 out of 1,000 people who phied impermissibly, why cannot permissibly blame X for having phied? Consider Cohen's 1981 infamous gate crash in which 999 of the 1,000 visitors climbed the fence of a certain rodeo, among them X, and suppose Y utters the following: I blame you for gate crashing the rodeo. It is clear that Y does not permissibly blame X here. So just because there's a percentage, you can't choose one thing to say that is part of the percent. It's in the percent. So that makes some sense that if you're going to blame, or if you can't assume to know if you can't specify the particular out of a percentage, and you can't assign blame for the same reason, because it looks like you only know to a certain percent and you can only blame to a certain percent. But since blaming and knowing are usually treated to be all or nothing sort of things, then it doesn't make sense and it's not permissible to do such things. Okay, so that I can understand the line of reasoning here at least. Okay, second, one can blame someone for fying by saying, I blame you for fying. But now note that uttering the following sounds paradoxically in just the same way as assertions of more conjunctions do. I blame X for fying, but I don't know that it was wrong of X to phi. Consider Y. I blame you for gate crashing the radio, but I don't know that it was wrong of you to do so. Y's utterance sounds paradoxical in much the same way as assertions of Moorian conjunctions do. Third, Z can challenge Y for blaming X for fying. Okay, let's look at this real briefly. I blame you for gate crashing, but I don't know that it was wrong of you to do so. Yeah, because if you don't know it was wrong, then what's the content of the blame then? So it seems like there's some sort of meta issue going on here with the meaning of the semantic issue, I guess you could say, blame and wrongness. So if you don't know that it was wrong, like the knowledge cancels the wrong, then how are you blaming? Because it seems like semantics of blame and wrong are connected here. Okay. Third, Z can challenge Y for blaming X for fying by asking how whether Y knows that it was wrong for X to phi, and criticize Y by pointing out that Y doesn't know that X did anything wrong in phying. Consider Y. I blame you for gate crashing the rodeo. Z1. How do you know that it was wrong for her to gate crash the rodeo? Z2. How do you know it was wrong for her to gate crash... Wait. Do you know that it was wrong for her to gate crash the rodeo? Z3. You don't know that it was wrong for her to gate crash the rodeo. In Z1 and Z2, Z's contribution clearly constitutes a challenge of Y's blaming, and in Z3, a criticism. Here is how K and B explains these data. In the gate crasher case, Y only has probabilistic evidence that X entered the premises impermissibly and so doesn't know that she did. Since permissible blaming requires knowledge of wrongdoing, Y does not blame X permissibly. Consider next the case in which Y blames X for phying and adds that she doesn't know that it was wrong for X to phi. For example, I blame you for gate crashing the rodeo, but I don't know that it was wrong of you to do so. Here's what's going on according to K and B. When Y utters, I blame you for gate crashing the rodeo, given that K and B holds, Y gives her hearer to understand that Y knows that it was wrong for X to gate crash at the rodeo. However, when Y adds, I don't know that it was wrong for you to gate crash the rodeo, she explicitly denies what she has given her hearer to understand earlier on. No surprise then that this utterance sounds paradoxical. Based on like one of these earlier papers on this stuff, you know, you can try to pull apart exactly a few more things. Is it sort of an implicature? Is it some sort of conversational thing? Is it a logical contradiction in terms of the structure of the Moorian sentence? Is it the semantics of, like, is it the actual semantics that are going into it? But overall, this is standard fare, but like there are like details here that could also be spelled out. So that's fine. Two is just moving on then. Third, since norms that forbid one from phying unless one satisfies condition C license criticism phying by pointing out that one has phyed even though one doesn't satisfy C, and since K and B forbids one from blaming someone for phying unless one knows that it was wrong for said person to phy, K and B also predicts, again correctly, that blamings can be criticized by pointing out that the blamer doesn't know that the person blamed did something wrong. Moreover, recall that if norms license criticisms of the sort just described, then it is only to be expected that one's phying can also be challenged by asking whether one satisfies C and how it is that one satisfies C, or at least if there are various ways of satisfying C. As a result, K and B also predicts, again correctly, that blamings can be challenged by asking how whether the speaker knows that it was wrong for the person to be blamed, the person blamed to phy. 6. In some, many of... Oh, wow, this is a short paper, even as far as short papers go. In some, many of its champions take KNA to be supported by 3 data points for assertion described above, and the fact that KNA offers a very attractive explanation of them. What this paper has shown is that there are parallel data points for blame, and that KNB offers an explanation of these data points that is no less attractive than the KNA offers for the corresponding data for assertion. The moral of the story, then, if champions are right and these data do provide evidence for KNA, the same goes mutatis mutandis for KNB. Okay, that's fun. I guess there's a question here. The big question would be, well, so what? Is there any problem that can be, or is there a problem or benefit for having KNB along with KNA? What's the difference between the knowing a warrants assertion. Let's see, get back up to here. Where's the first one? One, if assert P only if one knows P, then what's the difference between asserting blame only if one knows blame? What's the difference between asserting something and asserting a blame? Is there something that is different there? If it isn't, and if blame is just a regular old kind of assertion, like if it falls under a type, then the question would be, what's the point? Because if blame doesn't. Apparently, author and other people think that something else must be going on here, like, because I guess assertion and blame, assertion of blame, or assertion of moral neglect must not be taken to be such an obvious thing. So, what is the hay being made here? Like, what are these people getting out of it? So I don't know exactly. I don't know the literature enough about this, but asserting blame seems to have some sort of gravitas to it. You don't want to blame someone wrong, just as you don't want to assert something false. So maybe there is some sort of interesting parallel, and that this paper is getting the first sort of like groundwork for trying to understand why blame and knowledge are somehow aligned in a certain way. And that really would be an interesting conclusion to investigate. But this is a short paper and it's all done. And you know what? I'll do another one after this. I'm going to break stream for a second just to save myself from having to do video editing. So I'll be back in like a minute or so, okay, folks? But that's it for right now, and I'll be back to do Philosophy Roulette 81 in about a minute or two. So I'll be back. Hold your horses.